Okay, video number 2 for this week. Another poem on death, because I could not stop for death, otherwise known as or originally published as The Chariot. Emily Dickinson, one of our American greats. All right, let's begin. Sorry, my computer is over here. A little bit about Emily Dickinson as a poet and a poetess. She was a 19th century poet, so she lived in the 1800s, and she was influenced by both Marvell, who again we skipped, and also John Donne. And you can see that some of that coming through, especially with this one, with a different novel perspective on death. I really like hers as well. I love Donne and his poem on death. Emily takes a different take on it, and I really appreciate hers as well. All right. What was going on in the 1800s at the time? Lots of tuberculosis, lots and lots of death. There was a bit of a vampire scare during that time. Just some historical influences, possibly, which made her mindful of death. The title. So again, before you even read the poem, you got to take a look at the title and see if somehow in your TP-cast, the title gives you any kind of an indication of what the theme might be, what the message might be, what the poem might be about, what you think. Again, like the last poem, we've got 2 titles here. Originally published The Chariot, and then it was republished with the first line of the poem, because I could not stop for death. So my preference is The Chariot, quite honestly, but both of them have meaning, and in a TP-cast, you can take that title and derive some kind of meaning for The Chariot. In literature, there are archetypal symbols. Symbols that have been used for centuries and centuries by authors to indicate meaning and depth. It's one of the greatest things, I think, in studying literature, is to learn these symbols, these archetypal symbols, and you can derive meaning from things without even going very far in your study. If you understand what the symbol is, it sheds so much light on a character or on a story just by the symbol that the author chooses to use. And we will look at that further and further along this course. The Chariot, for those of you who know your Greek mythology, the Chariot is definitely a symbol. It's a classical allusion typically, and it would signify something to do with, likely here, the sun god. Okay, so what does the Chariot do? He drives his fiery sun, his chariot. He drives it every day, which is he's driving the sun, so brings it up and then brings it down at night. So it would signify something to do with time. Marvell, who we missed, he says in his poem to his coy mistress, at my back I always hear the winged chariot hurrying near. He knows that time is passing, and he's got to move to action. So time is proceeding, okay? So you could say that about the title. Because I could not stop for death, in that sense, in that one-liner, you know that death is being personified yet again. I couldn't stop for him. I couldn't stop for death. Okay, so if death is a person, what's going on, and life is eternal, life is not eternal. I couldn't stop for death. I had to die. I couldn't stop. All right, so I'm going to read the poem. Listen here. This has got great meter in it, so listen for that rhythm. I'm going to say it as enunciate it as I can. Listen for the iambs. She writes almost exclusively here in iambic tetra and trimeter. Again, so that's 4 feet per line or 3 feet per line, not the pentameter that Shakespeare typically does, which was 5 feet per line. So that iambs, 2 syllables in a foot, and it's ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And poets choose iambic for a reason. Iambs sound soothing to the ear. Ba-bum, 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 okay? Unlike trochaic, which is the opposite. Bum-bum, bum-bum, bum-bum. So when you're writing in iambs, it's pleasing to the ear, which usually goes along with whatever message the poet or the speaker is trying to communicate to you. The Chariot. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. You hear it? We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. Do you hear it? The meter changed right there. It changed right there. That's your shift. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tow. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling in the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. All right, hoping you heard all of those iams all the way through. A very soothing message here. Most students that I've had in the classroom, we read it out loud and they just give me a blank stare. What the heck is she talking about? And I think it's because we get lost in the language, we get lost in the rhythm. We just don't even understand it on a literal level. Well, before you could possibly try to figure out it on a figurative level, you got to figure it out on a literal level. So that's what the P section for the paraphrase is in the TP cast. All right, so again, this is by stanzas, and it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For this one's a little longer, so let's take it by stanza and figure out what each stanza is saying. Your first stanza, death and immortality picked me up in a chariot. Okay, they're being personified. I've given them the capital letter for the proper noun that she does here. So death and immortality pick her up. The speaker, of course we say the speaker, we don't say Emily Dickinson, because often the poets adopt the persona, and it's not themselves speaking, it's their speaker. So remember that for the paper, the speaker would indicate, it's not the poet would indicate, the speaker. So the speaker is picked up by death and immortality. And why is she picked up? Because she didn't want to take the time to get there by herself. Okay, she was like, I don't have the time to get there, so somebody comes along and picks her up and takes her unwillingly, we'll assume, at the moment. The second stanza says, I stopped working and playing in order to be polite as we took the scenic tour. Okay, she goes for a ride just to be polite. We saw the school as we drove, and we saw kids playing at recess in a circle. We passed fields ready for harvesting, and we watched the sun go down. Some interesting things going on there, if you can get the symbolism of what's going on. Actually, the sun went down first. Okay, that's where, or rather, he passed us. Who? He is the sun. Wait a minute, something just happened there. Or rather, he passed us. The line before it, we passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. Something happened there. The meter changed, and the sun is moving, and yet they are not moving. She is not moving. The speaker's not moving. Okay, what happened? Time's going on still, but this one's no longer participating in that. What happened? She died. Actually, the sun went down first and the air grew cold. My dress was very thin and my scarf was a thin veil. Okay, my gossamer, my gown, and tuppet only tow. No, wait, my tippet only tow, sorry. All right, so gossamer, two things that possibly could be for gossamer. Gossamer could be like a white flower, almost like baby's breath, okay? But gossamer can also be a reference to spider webs, so like cobwebs. So there's something going on there. My tippet only tow. Tow is like that thin veil. So if you think of, if you've ever seen the movie Romeo and Juliet, or even anybody in catacombs when they first die, they get this kind of really thin sheet. It's not even like a sheet. Tow's like the ballerina stuff, you know, it's like wedding stuff as well. You see, it's like a veil. Okay, so they get covered in a veil. So you know what's going on here. Okay, she's just died here. She looks like she's a cadaver laying on a slab. We stopped briefly at a residence that was nothing but raised grass. Okay, a raised grass. Think about that for a second. In all those old movies you've seen, somebody dies in the West and there's nowhere to bury him. It was a swelling in the ground. That was their house. A swelling in the ground. And what was the cornice? The cornice was in the ground. But what is a cornice? Usually my students ask me that as well. What's a cornice? I wish you could see it, but if I move the camera, I'll probably just destroy the whole video. So cornice is a cornice molding at the top of a wall where the wall meets the ceiling. Now, you're not going to see it in your classroom, but you'll probably see it in your house. Sometimes it's extremely thick and ornate, and sometimes it's a little bit thinner, but usually there's cornice molding that connects for decorative purposes the ceiling to the wall. Okay, so that was in the ground. You get where this is going? The house is in the ground, swelling over top of it. Body in the ground, buried with earth, just mounded up a little bit over top of it. Okay, it's been a long time since I first figured out the horse driving the chariot was taking me to my eternal dwelling. That's the meaning. So she is basically being picked up, literally picked up in a chariot by Death, who takes her and kind of shows her life, the school. Okay, that's youth, right? Kids playing, that's youth. Fields ready for harvesting. Okay, if you see fields ready for harvesting, harvest in autumn, and harvest is always a symbol of dying. Usually with and I think I've addressed that last semester as well with the seasons. Spring is birth, summer is, spring is a baby. Summer is you guys in your kind of your prime. Autumn is me, we're slowly dying, and then winter tends to be your grandparents. It's looking at death. Okay, so it's a progression here of time. Harvest, autumn, dying, and then we watch the sun go down. The sun passed them, and they stayed still. Time kept going. They were no longer participating because she ended up in a house in the ground, a grave, right? Okay, that's the paraphrase. Now, yes, did I get to that pretty quickly? Did you think, oh my gosh, that was way too fast? You start sitting down and analyzing it word for word, and you will get it. Okay, it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time. Usually in a class, I give students 20 minutes in groups to paraphrase it first and understand it at a literal level. Connotation. Again, the huge one here is personification. We're taking Death and we're giving him a body. When we do that, what do we do to it? We take something scary and big and beyond us, and we reduce it to human form because now it's our equal. Now it's less scary if it's in human form. Now some people might beg to differ on that, but the idea here is if I can reduce it to humanity, it's not quite so fearful. It's not quite so big and scary. It's just like me, okay? So yes, we're making Death a little bit less scary. The sun is also being personified in a very, very significant place in the poem. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. So right in that one line, your meter changes, so you know something happened. The speaker wants you to pay attention, and now we know, of course, in that moment that the speaker died. He passed us. What is he? What's the antecedent to the pronoun he there? It's the sun. So the sun is also being personified. Why am I personifying the sun? To make it clear that the sun keeps on going and they are stopping. Okay, so the sun, things are inanimate, things are animate. The dead are alive. Okay, so the Death becomes a person, the sun becomes a person. We also have the personification of grain, and why would I understand it that way? Why is the grain being personified? The gazing grain is the term. The line is, we pass the fields of gazing grain. Okay. Oh, I'm going to show you this. If grain is gazing, it's because these little kernels are ready to pop, and when they're ready to pop, it's harvest time. So again, it's signifying the passage of time, harvest, dying. All right, so there's always a point to personify something, and those three uses of personification are very significant, each of them. If you choose this poem for your paper, which I think would be a great choice, and you delve into the personification of it, you'll have a lot of material that you can use. So that one's a great choice. Okay. All right. So yes, it's being personified, but also the poetic device here is symbolism. Poetic devices, just like literary devices, are so much more powerful when you combine them. So you don't just use one, but you kind of put it together with another one, and then the reader can't possibly miss your meaning, or you're trying to draw the reader's attention to what exactly you're saying by using devices. And the symbolism works really nicely with the personification of the grain, because we know that's harvest. We know harvest is autumn. We know autumn means dying, right? Okay. More repetition. So the tautology of the repetition, we passed the fields of gazing grain, we passed the setting sun. So we passed. Why would she be repeating that? Isn't there other words that she could use? Did you just run out of words? No, she did not just run out of words. She's repeating this because the idea is it's going. There's no stopping this. We passed. We keep going. I have no control to stop this. I didn't want to stop for death, but it came anyway and got me, and I am just on this ride now. Okay? So it's a constant progression to the eternal destination. You cannot stop fate, or cannot stop death. Enjambment. Okay, I love the enjambment through it. You should know what that is, again, from the first lesson of this course. So the enjambment is no punctuation at all at the ends of lines. Often in poetry it has a comma, or it's got a period, semicolon, full colon, sometimes it's a dash. Whatever it is, the punctuation is designed to let you stop and take a breath. If there's an absence of that punctuation, then it's called enjambment. And it's literally like making the lines, jamming the lines together. That's what I typically tell students in my classroom. You're jamming them together. Well, why are you jamming them together? It means you don't have a moment to stop and take a breath. You just have to keep on reading. So let's say the dashes count as punctuation in the first stanza. But let's take the second stanza. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. It makes me keep going. It makes me, I don't get a choice to stop and take a breath because there's no punctuation there, so I have to just keep on going to the very next line. What does that signify? Again, you don't get to stop. This is not on your time frame. You just have to keep on going. You really don't have the choice of, you have to be on this constant progression. No time or choice to stop, okay? Enjambment is a great poetic device. And then the meter, and you should have heard it. It's iambic and tetra or iambic tri. Iambic tetra or iambic tri. So because she swaps between 4 feet a line and then to 3 feet a line, 4 to 3. But it's all in the iams, so it sounds so pretty. And again, if it sounds so soothing, it makes death just a little less scary because it sounds so pretty. It's so soothing to the ear. That's what iams are for. So again, we're taking something that was once scary, or to some is still scary, and we're making it sound soothing. We're making him come as a friend. We're making it almost inviting, right? There's a reason she does that. Where she changes it, watch that meter. If it changes, there's generally some kind of a shift she wants you to, or the poet, the speaker is trying to alert you to. So, and that is, I've touched it a couple of times, or rather, he stopped us, okay? Why does the meter change there? Because something very significant happened there, and I would argue that the significance of that moment is that the speaker died, literally died. So now she's looking at the dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. Okay, at that point she is laying in the grass, let's say, because of the dew, and she's got a very light funeral dress on and covered with that tippet, that scarf that they kind of throw over top of you in older movies like Romeo and Juliet, so you can see through it, but you can't see well. All right, attitude. Again, the iams. Whenever you're reading a poem or a sonnet in the iams, it's soothing, it's peaceful. She's also, her attitude is friendly. She's got a very friendly attitude. She is apprehensive at one point, but then she's kind of accepting at the end, right? She wasn't wanting to stop for death at first, but now she's kind of embraced the whole idea of eternity. Again, for your TP cast for the test, you want at least 2. I've got a bunch here. You want at least 2 because it plays into your next letter, which is S for the shift, right? So again, I've said this a couple times, I won't belabor the point. Or is your transition word. So shifts often happen at where there's a conjunction, okay? It's or. This line changes the tone from soothing to daunting, or rather, he passed us. They stopped, the sun kept going, okay? It appears the speaker dies here. So here's a picture of Juliet with that little, the tippet over top of it, which is made out of tulle. The tippet is a scarf, but this is the tulle. I think it's actually, you might call it down here tulle in the weddings. And since is also a transition word. Also, since typically identifies some kind of a shift if it's a transitional word. This line here changes the tone from daunting into acceptance. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Okay, so that's the acceptance that as that death comes to us all, and she's accepted it. Go back to the title again. Okay, if I take a look at it and I call it the Chariot, I would say, okay, well, the Chariot is clearly the sun god, and the inability to stop time because it's been driven by somebody else, and you just got to get on board with that. If I went with the second title, because it could not suffer death, okay, no escaping death. Death is going to come to us all. Theme. Death is a part of life. Embrace it. It is inevitable. The themes will be on your test. All the themes to all the poems, to all the poets, will all be on your test. So make sure you know that for sure. Okay? Death is a part of life. Embrace it. It's inevitable. Everybody dies. I'm going to leave it at that. Again, issues for the paper. Once again, I really would say theme, going your issue of theme is the easiest approach. You could take other issues though as well. And this one, you could just take an issue of symbol. But even if you're just going to do symbols for this, the symbols all lead toward a theme, right? That's what literary devices are supposed to do. That's what poetic devices are supposed to do. All roads lead to Rome. You've heard that. All literary devices should lead to theme. If a poet knows what the poet is doing, the poetic devices he uses go all in one direction. They should all be pointing toward the theme. That's why in your paper, where I'm saying, argue theme, take the devices and say how each device proves the theme, supports the theme. We'll be doing that all course. We'll be doing that in drama next unit, and we'll be doing that also in short fiction at the end. Let's take a look at how all devices build the theme, because that's what the author is after. He's building it. Nothing is random. Nothing is chaotic. If I use a symbol, it's because I'm trying to communicate theme. If I use a bunch of them, I'm communicating a certain theme, and your job is to figure out what that theme is. All right, I think that was actually shorter than the last one, so we are set. And I will bid you adieu for now and talk to you next week.